Guys, I have a serious confession that I have to make right now. I have a serious problem, and that is that I cannot stop watching the show Survivor. It has literally been on Amazon Prime. I don't know when they released it, but I keep watching the show over and over and over again. And the problem is it's always the same thing. They literally just do 2 challenges and then they talk amongst each other, they backstab each other, and then they vote somebody out. But I cannot stop watching it, and I don't know why. And I think it's such an interesting game, and it's for $1 million, so that obviously perks my attention. But it's all about like trust. And it's the strangest thing because you get 20 random people, and you have to make alliances and you have to make friends in a very short amount of time, 39 days in the entirety of this game. And the other people determine if you make $1 million or you go home a loser. And so this week we're continuing in our conversation about #relatable, and this week we're talking about trust. And I don't know about you guys, but trust is something in society that we kind of shy away from a lot of times. And what I want to encourage you guys is we're always trusting in something. Like if you say, oh, I don't trust in anything but myself, like you can't really say that unless you're like a monastic monk who's literally just isolated themselves from all things. If you're driving down the road, you're trusting people that they're not going to shift and hit you. If you fly on an airplane, you're trusting that the plane is not an idiot. If you're trusting in any situation, if you're getting a sandwich or a coffee, you're trusting that that person's not going to poison it or mess it up or hurt it in any way. Like we trust so much as a society because it's necessary. And the question is, are we going to trust? It's the question of who can we trust and how do we even trust in a Christian way. And what I wanted to talk about is not necessarily trusting God, because I think we talk about that all the time, and every single thing that we do has to stem from trusting in the Lord. But it's really, how do we trust the other people in our sphere of influences? Are we called to do that? Are we called to be vulnerable? Are we called to ask for that? Or are we called to something different? And I think Acts 2 gives a great picture on what trust is and how do we kind of replicate it in this society from the early believers. So if you're not familiar with the book of Acts, it's basically right after Jesus is resurrected, he ascends into heaven, and then they're just like, build the church. And the Pentecost happens, and then Peter gives a sermon, and thousands of people are saved. And then we go into this Acts 2, where it's really the beginnings of this Christian society. And we kind of get the first look on kind of the ideal Christian society that Christ kind of pictured when he ascended. And one of the coolest things I think that we find is in Acts 2, 44 through 45, we read this, and it says, and all who believed were together and had all things in common. And they were selling their possessions and belongings and distributing the proceeds to all as any had need. And normally when I read this scripture, I think, oh, that's so cool, right? They're just all unified and they're excited and they're going and selling and they're just experiencing joy, and it's so cool. And I don't really get the full picture of what's really happening here and how it deals directly with trust. You see, their economy and their well-being is not the same as we have in modern America. They lived in a very limited economy, meaning that if some person had more, it directly didn't allow the person that had less. So that it wasn't like they could just give up their meal for a day and go to H-E-B and go pick up something else. They didn't drive through and like, oh, I had Taco Bell, and then I met with my friends and somebody didn't have dinner, so I gave them my Taco Bell, I can just go to Taco Bell again. That wasn't how it was working. These people were bringing their proceeds, they were bringing their livelihood and distributing it to all. They were sacrificing their security, their food, And if somebody else didn't pick up the slack for them, they would have starved. Like, that's what's going on in this verse. It's not just this happy-go-lucky going thing. It's these people that are desperately trusting in one another to say, I'm going to give you what you need, you give me what you need, and we're all going to come together as one. Not for benefit, like, oh, if I give you $2, you're going to scratch my back. No, this is just a complete and utter dependence upon one another. And I think that's such a cool example, because I can't relate to necessarily that, because I do have enough food, and I don't believe we really struggle with that in a majority of our lives. Some might. But I think what we struggle with is our currency isn't like food or money when it comes to trust. Like, our currency is our reputation, our pride. I think a lot of times we are so scared to trust other people because we think that'll make us look weak or be perceived as not this extremely perfect person that a lot of us strive to be. And what I want to talk to you guys about is us not trusting one another, us not being vulnerable, us not giving up and kind of putting our pride to the side doesn't allow an opportunity for us to trust people. You see, in the Bible, it's called to bear one another's burdens. And we can't do that with trust. We can't do that with holding and saying, you know what, I'm not going to say this to my small group because people are going to look at me differently. Because almost 9 times out of 10, the thing that you're struggling with, somebody else in that group is struggling with too, and they feel alone, they feel isolated. But it takes that initial step of trust to say, you know what? I trust in the Lord, but I also trust in my community of believers. I trust in the community of Christianity that I might give up this reputation of being perfect in order to help others. In the day and age where our currency is our reputation, it takes a lot of trust. It takes a lot of vulnerability in order to really do some crucial work that we have for the gospel. But it's necessary. So you guys have a almost immediate opportunity to practice this. When we go into small groups, don't be hesitant. Don't hold anything back because of perception. But really follow the call that these early believers made and say, you know what, I'm going to trust you because you're my brother and sister.